need to be able to analyze a whole marketplace of potential solutions to find the very best one. A human can't do that. You need machine learning. You need AI to be able to help do that. So we think of AI, at least at Optifino, as being, a great partner for humans. It's like, Mike Doniger, our chief innovation officer, says, machine beats man, but man and machine beat machine. And that's, kind of how we feel about.
Love that.
That's how I feel about AI, in creative endeavors as well, too. It's like, AI can really help you, find faster processes, get work done much quicker. But I think we see that on the creative side, it's always better when there's a human strategist behind it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Don't Do That podcast. I am your host, Kelly Waltrich, and today I am here with my friend and one of my favorite marketers in the space, Mark Forman, CMO of Optifino. Hi, Mark.
Hi, how's it going, Kelly?
What's up? How you doing?
It's been too long. You didn't say anything about my beard. I shaved. Everyone's been talking about my...
I did. I know. Why? What happened? What?
So before we get started, I got to say I'm learning how to breathe. There's this book called Breath by John Nestor.
Yes.
And he encourages people to learn how to breathe by taping their mouths shut when they sleep. And so the only way I could do that was to shave the beard. So it's all in service of improving myself. I'll say that.
Okay. Can we have this conversation with my husband when we get off the phone?
My wife gave me the book. So yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to do that. Totally. I need a holiday to come up so I can do that. Because I was like, hey, dear, you're going to need to move somewhere else when you sleep. And that's so fun. Nobody wants to have that conversation.
No, we need the help with the breathing. And it's all about breathing through the nose. It's really important. So
my daughter inherited this from him, I think, because she's loud too. And she's 3.
Yeah. Oh, it happens. It happens. My son, Jacob, same problem.
Oh, my gosh. All right. Well, we can talk endlessly about our sleep issues because I have more than just him. But that is a conversation for another day. So, Mark,
absolutely,
tell everyone about you and about what you're up to these days.
Sure. So, thank you for the introduction, Kelly. That's very, very sweet of you. Very kind of you to ask me to be on the show too, which I listen regularly, and it's a lot of fun. And I feel like I'm learning a ton from other people. So I feel a lot of pressure to be really smart today. So I'm going to do my best. I'll see if I can do that.
Let's see how you do.
So about me, I am an accidental marketer. I studied poetry in college. I tell people this all the time. So I started my journey in marketing by learning how to write very economically, with some really great writers, including the Yale Younger Series poetry winner, Jeff Skinner. And in those classes and all that work I did as a young person, I learned how to say as much as I could with very little. And, that comes in really handy because people have very short attention spans. So I got started in marketing for a small insurer out of Louisville, Kentucky, which is where I'm located. I was a webmaster. I don't know if you remember this position back in the late 90s, early 2000s. My first job was as a webmaster for an insurance company. And because I taught myself HTML, all the other things, and got started there, and eventually kind of worked my way into as sort of a liaison between IT and marketing at that firm, and then built a similar position at my next firm, which was called Jefferson National. Eventually, ran the digital marketing discipline there, the CX discipline as well, ultimately, and then we sold to Nationwide back in the mid 2010s. And I ended up moving over to a small outsourced insurance desk called Retire One. So I built out all of the marketing and PR there at Retire One. And I met our mutual friend, Jason Lahita, who introduced us, which I want to give Jason a shout out here right now to say thank you for introducing me to all the great folks at Intentionally, because it was a life-changing introduction. And Jason's such a great guy. He's been so helpful to me, since I've known him, I guess going back to 2019 pre-COVID.
What's up, Jay? Hope you're listening.
Yeah. Tune in, man. So left Retire One to work with you guys at Intentionally after the introduction from Jason Lahita, and got to serve a lot of great clients and learned more in whatever it was, 15 or 16 months there than I had learned in the prior probably 10 years. It was remarkable. It was like I mean, retiring one was a great education because I had to build everything from scratch, which I love to do. But you sort of, I was sort of working in a vacuum. And when I moved over to Intentionally, it was like going from a master's program to a PhD program, and working with a lot of really smart people who were great marketers, who were great collaborators, who were seeing things differently than I saw them. And I don't know about you, but you do get into your little echo chamber and you start to believe that the way you see things is the right way to see things. And I was quickly disabused of that notion by working with some really smart, very effective people who could do more than I've ever seen people, capable of doing. It just was remarkable. So left Intentionally, to now come over to Optifino, which is a startup. We are a digital BGA, which is a brokerage general agency. Essentially, the way to think about it, Kelly, is that we are an AI powered insurance marketplace, right? And I'll explain that a little bit because I think it can be a little obtuse unless you kind of explain. Most life insurance is kind of difficult to see aggregated in one place.
Yep.
It's easy to go get a term life insurance quote somewhere because term life insurance is easy to sort of pipe to other platforms from platform to platform. But a lot of life insurers have these really old legacy systems that are difficult for them to create APIs into and out of. And so it's really difficult when you're designing life insurance cases, or even, simple ones versus, really complex ones. It can be really difficult to design these strategies and these cases. But Optifino, what we do is we use our machine learning and our AI engine to go out and sort of kind of build a marketplace of solutions based on, what your desired outcome is, what your goal for your client is. So in the past, maybe, you as an insurance agent or a hybrid advisor, you might know of two or three different kinds of policy types from two or three different insurers. And when you're designing a case, that would be maybe the universe of solutions that you could draw from, because it's just difficult to know all the ins and outs of all these different kinds of policies. But what Optifino does is we take down your client goals and needs. We take down information about your clients themselves. And then based on, their premium targets or whatever coverage amounts they need or whatever their risk tolerance is, we can return a marketplace of solutions that would take you weeks or months to analyze, possibly years. Like going back to the earlier example, maybe you would have 6, 7, 8 different kinds of policies to look at if you were thinking about 3 different carriers and maybe 3 different kinds of policy types. But with Optifino, we can basically take a look at, thousands of policy iterations and then return to the top 10, top 15, top 20, and then visualize it for the agents so that they can see all of these different policies in the context of one another. So they can start to pull on levers and say, let's see what, how the coverage would be impacted by X, Y, or Z, or how the premium would be impacted by, taking on more risk. Or what if it was not an accumulation intention? What if it was more of a protection intention? So we work on that right there in an interface where folks can visualize it. Did I say too much?
Breathe, Mark, breathe.
I'm learning.
Okay, so I have lots of questions. First, you all heard
Sure.
Mark. Mark is my one that got away. We all have one in life, and he is mine. But I'm so glad to see you thriving, obviously, and now it's just as fun. You're on our Slack as a client, so that works out just as well. Okay, so first, let's talk about your experience. So I recruit marketers for a lot of firms, and it is dicey out there, right? Like, we know that the difference between a good, competent marketer and a bad one, there is a vast ocean in there of craziness to navigate. And I think this is why firms are so skeptical, why they have such a hard time. Give me your thoughts around what makes the upbringing of a solid marketer, because our clients and our listeners struggle with this. And I don't
I
blame
think
them.
it's right. It's really hard. I think at their core, a really good marketer is very creative. And that could be creative in the sense that, they like to make decoupage, or it could be creative in the sense that they see different solutions to problems than you do. Going back to my experience studying creative writing in college, I will say that my professor, Jeff Skinner, shout out Jeff Skinner, A Guide to Forgetting is one of my favorite poetry books ever. But Jeff Skinner said, that a real artist knows how to associate two disparate things in a way that makes you think differently about both of them, maybe. And I think a good marketer can do that too, because we see things, we're all trying to box above our weight, to cut above the clutter, to separate the signal from the noise. We want to be the signal, not the noise. How do you do that? Well, you've got to think differently about how to message. You've
Yep.
got to think differently about the problem that your client has, or that your ideal client has. And you've got to associate some things that maybe people hadn't thought of being associated before, so that they're thinking differently about the problem too, and they see you as the solution. So I
Yeah.
think I think creativity is a huge part of it, and I don't know that it can be taught, but I think people can be curious about it, right?
Yeah. I think that's fair. And I think that you're a good example. Like your background is a good example where you have had solid technical expertise too, and you built on that. And you also had to figure it out by yourself as a team of one. Like I do look for that in people that I recruit too. So I have like a checklist of things because I've gotten it wrong so many times that like you got to eventually start getting it right. So we have a
Oh
checklist
yeah.
of things, and we have a board now of people intentionally that review so we don't make mistakes. But um, those are a couple of the things. Like, do you have technical expertise somewhere that stands out? Because you won't make it if you won't be, especially the next how many years of all this crazy AI and all the new tools and all. You have to be able to figure things out technically and blend that with creative, and you have to be able to be a team of one. You know?
Oh, I agree. I was going to ask you, actually. It seems like that's where things are now, and I don't know if it's because my experience has really been fairly limited to startups. I really haven't worked for large organizations before, but it seems to me like there are two different worlds of marketers now. The one
Yep.
stream, the startup stream, that potentially will give you that molded person who has a lot of experience doing lots of different things. You could get a copywriter who does some graphic design, who also
Yep.
understands HubSpot, right? Who can do some
Yep.
HubSpot. But from the corporate world, the larger enterprise world, that may not be, the most beneficial thing to the enterprise. You might need someone who knows how to just do one thing and do it very well. I
Yeah.
just don't have experience with that. So I don't, that's why I wouldn't say that I think one is better over the other. It just depends on where you're hiring from.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you say that because so SEI, Vanguard, we have a lot of large financial organizations around this location. And so I get a lot of resumes from those places and I get a lot of friend referrals from those places. And I have a lot of discussions with folks from companies like that to tell them that I will not hire if your background is only an SEI or a Vanguard or whatever it is, because there's so many people in those organizations that your role is so narrow that you don't play in the bigger picture in those organizations. And I made that mistake enough times to know that coming into an environment like this is like a firing squad, right? Like you will you you will be running for your life coming from that, trying to do well in this. So I definitely look for people with startup backgrounds rather than corporate backgrounds. Corporate backgrounds are great. If you're great at something, because you grew up in environments where you had to figure those things out, that's
Yeah,
different. But
right.
but yeah, I do have a lot of uncomfortable conversations around that. I won't hire out of those organizations for intentionally.
Let me ask you this. I'm going to ask you a question that maybe, I think
Go ahead.
about Tita. I think about Tita Powell when I ask this question too. My son Jacob pitched to me that there's this difference among the generations and our adoption of technology, and he frames it in a really interesting way. I don't know if this is his original thought, but we were talking at dinner one night, and he said, Gen X, which is my generation, I'm
Yeah.
55 years old. He's like, Gen X, you guys, the internet, you guys built it because you had to figure it out. And that's true of me. Like I
Yeah.
got out of college, I hadn't taken a class in programming, but I taught myself HTML. I went to work for a very small firm and worked with a guy who taught me Photoshop. And then I learned how to use, Lycos and Yahoo and Google and all the things. And shout out to Control C, Control V, the first shortcut keys I learned on a keyboard. I'll never forget as long as I live. But so we Gen X, we had to kind of teach ourselves how to build it, and we did. And
Yeah.
then the millennials, they were the MySpace generation. So they had to learn HTML also in a way, because they had to build these sweet little pages that told everybody who they were, who
Yep.
would, draw the right amount of attention from the right people, right?
Yep. Hmm.
But then you got the Gen Z kids who were given these phones. Everything is packaged, everything is kind of created, written for them, and they don't have to, sort of figure it out on their own. There's not as much of a relationship. They don't have as deep a relationship with the underlying technology as maybe our generations have.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing that I'm kind of looking out for right now too, is now we're starting to hire, and I've interviewed some Gen Z people, and I hesitate to say kid because they're the same age as my children. My children are still kids to me, even though they're adults.
Yeah.
Um, I'm looking for that right now, and I think I'm seeing it play out a little bit, in that I think some of the younger folks are depending a lot more on AI to do work that I would want to see that they could do on their own. Maybe AI can help supplement or augment, but we're seeing folks, I think, leaning on AI a little too much to create the things that, I need to see it demonstrated that how
Yeah.
to write a great, subject line, or how to write
Yeah.
great email copy or whatever. But,
Oh
you know,
man. Yeah, it's going to get increasingly harder to find the good ones.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I don't know. I haven't run into that problem yet because I'm trying to find the people that I'm trying to find. I think what AI has done for agencies as it has made the combination of AI and human so much more important. And so like
amen.
we're trying to figure out like how do we get faster and more efficient so that somebody doesn't say to us, I'm just gonna have AI do that. But in a
Right.
way that like shows such expertise beyond what they could figure out through putting something stupid into like garbage in, garbage out is like at the end of the day. Um, so I'm trying to find people who are loving the AI and who are using it in like really interesting and fun ways to make themselves faster and smarter. So I don't know. I'm sure I'm going to run into that. I'm sure.
Yeah. How do you?
But I haven't
And so,
yet.
yeah. So, are you seeing that any of the folks that you're interviewing so far? Are you seeing some of the work product that you're trying to analyze, and you're like, well, that doesn't seem like that was 100% human generated, or does that, is that a concern at all?
I'm not concerned. I don't know why, but you know me and Tina, like we love it. We
Yeah. Yeah.
love the AI.
I do
So
too.
I don't hire anyone generally unless I have a good reference from somebody anyway, at
I
least
think
for
that's the
now.
yeah.
So, not yet, but I'm sure I will. I mean, I see companies. I have one client that puts everything through AI and they just pass garbage around all day and the team it intentionally is like, "Oh
Right. You can
man,
tell. I think
if
you
this
can
is the
tell.
bar, if this is the bar, then
Right.
we're in trouble." Um, but I think there's a happy medium. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll see if I think it's already ridiculously impossible to find great marketers. I think it's going to be even harder.
I do too. And I think the interesting thing, when you're talking about how AI will impact it too, is interesting, maybe analog for this is what happened with the robo advisors. If you look back 15 years ago, or was it 10? Listen, time is tough for me. It might have been yesterday. I don't
Same.
know. Um, but
Well,
sometime in the last
let's
15
let's err
years,
on the side of
yeah.
shorter just for our own.
Right, exactly. I'm not that old. Well, when the Model T came out, no. So when the robos were introduced, I remember it being this moment for advisors, this moment of kind of existential fear that they were going to be
Panic.
replaced.
Yep.
There was a lot written about the future of financial advice and how it would be dispensed. And so now it's 2025, and what have we learned? I don't have the figures in front of me, but it's something like, I think it's 64% of robo assets are actually with the hybrid robos. That would be the robos that are also driven by the human advice. So where the robo and the human are providing the advice together, that's where we're seeing success with the robo advisors. And I think that's probably going to be true of any of these AI augmented um, careers. And
Yeah.
so even kind of digging a little further, if you look at what Optifino's doing and what we're doing with AI, is we don't believe that AI is going to replace the insurance agent, because we work with these really ultra high net worth clients who are trying to preserve wealth for generations. It's not just, buy term life
Right.
and invest the rest. It's we need to create these dynastic trusts that will, that will prevent, uh, future generations from paying extraordinary inheritance taxes and things like that. And so, you need to be able to analyze a whole marketplace of potential solutions to find the very best one. A human can't do that. You need machine learning. You need AI to be able to help do that. So we think of AI, at least at Optifino, as being, a great partner for humans. It's like, Mike Doniger, our chief innovation officer, says, machine beats man, but man and machine beat machine. And that's, kind of how we feel about
Love that.
that's how I feel about AI, in
Yeah.
creative endeavors as well, too. It's like, AI can really help you, find faster processes, get work done much quicker. But I think we see that on the creative side, it's always better when there's a human strategist behind it, who's got a framework in mind, who knows what the end goal is, who also, and I will say this, has human experiences that include
Right.
pain and fear and frustration, and who can truly, and we say this all the time, we need our marketers to be empathetic. Humans can be empathetic, machines can't. And that's what you find in the work that a real human marketer does. That's why they're still important.
Okay, I feel like we could talk marketing all day, so we might have to do that after this show. But I
Sorry.
do
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to no, but I do want to talk about Optifino. So many of you may not know, but I told Mark that I had a moment where I was doing life insurance underwriting as I was making my way through this industry trying to figure out what I liked. And why is it not until now where we can have a marketplace? Like, why have we gone all these years without a centralized location for people to choose their policies based on their needs? I do not understand.
Right. And that's a great question. And it's actually a really important question, because if you want Gen, Z to adopt, right? If you want to sell insurance to Gen Z, you better be able to do it in a place where they're accustomed to, making their financial decisions. Like, it should be as easy as buying an ETF at Robinhood, right?
Right.
And it's not. And I know it's a highly regulated purchase, and there's a lot that we have to know, and you have medical underwriting and things like that. That's not going to change.
Right.
But why can't we? And I think the answer to that question is, through all of the acquisition over the last, whatever, 30 or 40 years in the life insurance space, these insurers have purchased these legacy systems that they haven't been able to integrate into their full stack. And so you have, system after system after system upon which these policies are being built. And so they don't talk very well together. I saw a stat recently, or well, maybe just a joke, that life insurance really hasn't innovated since the 80s. We're talking COBOL is a language that's being used. So I think that's the reason, right? It's like everything was opened up to the web so that we could make all of these financial purchases and transactions and planning, make it all really frictionless. Life insurance is the one space where that's not true, but Optifino is able to actually hit all of these different carriers, you know, pull all of these different policies together based on client needs and projected future needs, and basically build a marketplace on the fly of solutions. It's really remarkable.
Can we think of it as the TAMP of insurance?
Ooh. Um, who would argue that you can is David Lau, because I think he tried to copyright that word.
Oh,
I
he
think, what did he
did?
call it? Yeah, I think he called DPL originally the turnkey insurance management platform, the TIMP,
Oh,
turnkey insurance management platform.
I
So he
see
might
why we
argue
did
that
not
we can't say that.
I see why he did not stick to that. Oh, man. I get it,
um,
though. I
I
think the logic is great,
Yeah. No,
right?
I think that's fair. I think the problem that we face a little bit is that annuities are really thought of as being kind of the, asset managers kind of insurance solution, because there's an investment component. If it's a variable annuity, it has to be managed. There are underlying, investments in the annuity. With life insurance, with cash value life insurance, there is, a cash value associated with the policy. So it can be a part of the portfolio where folks need to think of it more as an asset class rather than just
Got it.
a dead expense. Yeah, term life is that. There's no cash value. If you don't use it before the term expires, hopefully you don't, but if you don't use it before the term expires, there's no value built up. You give it away. It's done. Unless it's convertible. But you know what I'm saying? It's like cash value insurance is kind of confusing for the larger financial world because annuities make more sense as kind of an asset where permanent life insurance feels just like a protection rather than a potential accumulation vehicle. And
Okay.
we only do, I will say, just and to kind of further that point, we just deal with permanent life insurance, a little bit of term, but permanent life insurance. So we're not incorporating annuities into these plans as
Got
well.
it. Got it. All right. Knowing that you have the audience you have here, that is a lot of RIA folks. What do
Mhm.
you have to say about your dipping your toe back into insurance and the part that you think it should play?
I think about the family office. I think about the RIAs who working with the ultra high net worth. This would be a
Right.
huge opportunity for them again to create these really complex structures for these families where they don't want to just transfer assets to the next generation. They really want to transfer values, and this is an opportunity for them to do that. Life insurance is unique that way because it can be a great tax mitigation tool. It can be a great legacy planning tool. All these things should hold great appeal to people who serve very high net worth clients. And here's the cool thing: at Optifino, we've got the expert case designers and the AI to help you design the best possible outcome for your clients. So you don't have to be an expert. You also wouldn't be designing it, of course, because you're probably not insurance licensed. I mean, you may be, but if you're a pure RIA, you can work with us as an outsourced insurance desk. We would work with you and the client together to come up with the optimal solution and build that for you. But then we also have opportunities with hybrid advisors. I mean, I think about, one of the clients I worked with when I was with Intentionally, um, Silver Oak Securities. There's a lot of hybrids that work with Silver Oak who believe a great deal in insurance because they're not working with clients in the larger cities. They're working with clients in the bedroom communities and the farming communities around the larger cities. And a lot of those folks they're pretty conservative. So a 4 or 5% return in cash value in a life insurance policy that guarantees, some great tax benefits, that would be really appealing to them. So it's not going to be appealing to all the clients of RIAs. It's not going to solve all the problems for all the clients of RIAs, but for those three audiences, I think it makes a whole lot of sense and more. But for those three audiences, it definitely makes a lot of sense.
Awesome. Well, I thought of you last week because I was in Nashville with our friends at Silver Oak
Oh, cool.
and my flight got canceled. And so it's the first client that I had to ask to take me to get pajamas and a toothbrush.
Well, you were in the right company because I'm sure Billy helped you find a toothbrush and some
Dave,
pajamas.
actually, but
Absolutely.
yes,
Dave
they are the
Melendi.
best. They are the best.
Shout out to
And
them.
they miss you for sure.
Oh man, I
Uh,
miss them.
I know they are the best. All right. So, Mark, it's that time. The
Yes.
premise of this podcast is that we learn better from our mistakes than from our wins. So, what'd you bring for us today? What are we not doing today?
I think the biggest mistake I make is in being a little arrogant about what I know about my audience. And like I, I I bristle sometimes when a person who hasn't been, in my shoes or hasn't worked with the folks I work with for as long as I have, when they try to tell me things about my audience. And that's ego for sure. I mean, I realize that's a shortcoming. But having said that, and especially having started at Optifino just 4 months ago, it's become super clear to me that the most important thing that a marketer has to keep in mind is that they can't ignore their audience. So what we're not doing today is we're not ignoring our audience.
I love that. Okay. So, put yourself back in intentionally world for a minute. We have an endless number of clients who come to intentionally for lead generation, right? This is one of the competencies that we have that most agencies don't. And it's countless times that people want to skip this step and they want to get right to generate me leads and let me buy them. And I don't care where they come from, and figure it out and get me to this many in a month and do it. I'm going to close my eyes and hope for the best. And like, it is true. It's true.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
And we somehow make it happen. But it is really a struggle to have that conversation that you just mentioned, and how important it is to start at the starting point, start at the start line. Who are you trying to serve, and what is their challenge? Like, it's wild to me how many people don't want to start there and feel like they can come back to it.
Oh, right. I mean, you were saying you were interviewing Penny Phillips of Journey, a few weeks ago, and you mentioned that someone else you'd interviewed said, you better love your problem, the problem that you're solving. And I feel like that's also true of the audience you're serving, because it's their problem you're trying to solve if you're a B2B marketer or a B2B business. Absolutely. And so, how do you get to know what their problem is without asking them directly, without hearing it from them? Right.
Right. It's
Um,
crazy.
it is absolutely crazy, because here's the thing. We're all human animals, and we thrive on narrative. We binge watch Netflix. We love storytelling. We love stories. Um, that's the way we get to know one another. That's the way we have our shared experiences. We share culture. We share meaningful things with each other. If you're not talking to your audience and hearing their stories,
Yeah.
you don't really know them deeply as people. And I know that it's always been funny. Like, for the last 20 years, people have been saying, marketers, you have to be empathetic. You have to really feel for your audience. Well, I mean, that's sort of an empty demand. It's like, what's the point of the empathy? Like, how's that going to make you a better marketer? Well, it's going to, you can't really have empathy for your audience until you know them, right? Until you ask them questions about themselves. Ask them who you serve. Ask them, what gets you in your seat every day. Ask them what's the most painful thing about the business that they run. Because if you're in B2B financial services, you're serving a whole lot of people who are business owners,
Um,
small, medium, large. They're all business owners. They all have pains that you're trying to help them solve, and you're trying to partner with them together. And if you don't know them, what can you say about that?
right. So I may have told this story on this podcast before, although I don't think I did. Mark, you know who does this really, really, really flippin' well is HubSpot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell this like real quick story. When I started my job leading marketing at eMoney Advisor, I had never been the head of marketing before. Stepped into that role, totally clueless. I was young, I was dumb, and I was at the helm of this marketing organization. And I remember I got an email from HubSpot that was like, congratulations on getting your new role. I imagine that you're in the process of designing your marketing team. Here is a PowerPoint of, 100 marketing organizations across the country, the best ones, so that you can get an idea of how marketing organizations, top tier marketing organizations are being designed. And I'm like, no way, score. A couple weeks later, it was like, hey, Kelly, I hope you enjoyed that. They probably saw that I opened it 76 times. And they're like, hey, you're probably now trying to come up with job descriptions of the people that you want to hire. So here's X number of job descriptions that you can pull from and shape to your needs. And Word files of job descriptions that I sometimes still pull out of my.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And then, of course, the end goal is like, okay, and you have this, what the org needs to look like, who the people are. Now you're going to need to power your team with technology. And there were steps in between, but you get the gist.
Yeah.
And if that is not the perfect example of like persona Kelly Waltrich, clueless new head of marketing, needs all the things, and we're going to give them to her so she's loyal to us until the end of
Yeah.
time. Fast forward 20 years, we sit on their board. Every one of our clients is a HubSpot client. Like, I just think about that all the time. It is a masterclass in knowing your audience, if I've ever seen one, right?
And I will say this, I always wondered why you loved HubSpot so much, and now I know. It's like
Because I would not be here today
right.
without that damn PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Seriously.
But that all comes from their lived experience, right? They don't know
Yeah.
these things unless they talk to enough people, because you can't put something that exhaustive together unless you talk to a lot of people about what their pains are and how, they've
Yes.
tried to solve them. Yeah, it's amazing.
What other companies do you think do an awesome job at that?
I think Josh Brown does a really phenomenal job of telling stories. Like he does a
He
really
does.
incredible job of tying stories back to markets and market behavior and making it sort of universal for his clients so that they understand, why a certain decision would be made in a certain market. Right down to like really funny, granular things. That's really hard storytelling. So
Really
like
hard.
as a creative writing person, I respect that a tremendous deal.
So true,
You know,
and he knows exactly the type of people that follow him, So he knows how to talk. He knows ho how he can use a little swagger to get their
right,
attention. Yeah,
right.
that's such a
There
good
are
example.
little newsletters I subscribe to that do a great job of storytelling as well. There's I'm not going to mention names, but there's an insurance platform. One of their executives writes a really great newsletter where they include funny anecdotes along with examples of markets and how insurance kind of fits into portfolios at specific times. And I just think it's great storytelling. Um, you know, and I've seen recent examples of folks who are, as to your point, I just sat down in this chair, whatever, 4 weeks ago, and I'm starting to get the not starting, I've been getting for the last several weeks, the emails from people saying, "Hey, congratulations on your new job." As it turns out, we know exactly how you feel right now. You've got to do all of these things, and we've got these services, and there are a lot of people who are doing a really great job with that now because the playbook has been written, and it probably was HubSpot who wrote it, right?
Oh, man.
But it's available. It's available to folks. The funny thing about it now too is, in my opinion, there's no excuse for not knowing things anymore. It's all at your fingertips. You don't have to go, consult a card catalog, using the Dewey Decimal System to research something. You can ask ChatGPT or Claude or whomever, and then if you want to dig deeper and learn more and find out what's behind it, you get the sources and you go find the stuff. So figuring out who your audience is can include some of that upfront work, but I do think there's nothing like being in person with someone and having them tell their story to you. Because I will say this, you have to trust that people know how to tell their stories. Because I know a
Right.
lot of people are like, well, I don't know if they, no, they know how to tell their stories. They do. And it's the hearing their voice in your ear in the same room is different than going to ChatGPT and asking, what a hybrid advisor in Tennessee looks like or who they serve or whatever.
Yep.
You have to ask them directly, I think.
I think so too. I feel like you did such an excellent job talking about Silver Oak again, pulling stories out of their advisors. That was an awesome experience.
One of the top 10 moments in my professional career, and that speaks to the trust and the curiosity too, because I didn't know this audience very well at all. I'd only worked with pure RIAs before I started working with Billy and the team at Silver Oak. And so I had to know who these hybrid advisors are and what makes them tick and what are their pain points and who are they serving. So I sat in a room with a video crew for a day and a half and interviewed 25 people, 25, which may not sound like a huge deal. It was massive. And by the end of it, we were all exhausted, but I'd never learned so much in such a short period of time as I did. And the thing that we were sure of in that effort was that these folks would know how to tell their story, because in the end, our ultimate goal actually for them was to finish with some videos that they could use to market their practices with. But secretly, I also was getting to know who they were, so I could
Right.
understand that ICP that we were serving of the hybrid RIA in these more rural communities or whatever, or these not large towns, I would say. And my favorite stories is what I was interviewing Edmund McKnight, who is I believe he's out of Murfreesboro, and uh, he opened his interview. I said, so tell me a story of someone who you were able to meet a particular need for, that you solved a particular problem from. And he stopped and he said, I had this client come in and she said, Edwin, I need a Solomon. And he took this dramatic pause. I'm like, oh, was one of the best interviews I've ever done, because he
Oh,
knew his story so well. And people do. They know how they got where they got. They know, everyone is the hero of their story and they know how to tell it, and you have to trust them to do that. And you'll learn so much by hearing them tell it.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so again, we could talk forever about this, but let's give our listeners a little bit of a framework to go through to get here. So you joined the team at Optifino. You have ChatGPT at your fingertips, but you and the Intentionally team are still going through a pretty intense effort to get the story right. Like, why is that? What does it look like? And how do our listeners take a little bit of what we do as marketers and implement it in their firms?
I hate to keep going back to this, but it is pretty simple. So one of the first things that I did when I got in this chair was to talk to one of our users and say, what was your experience? What was your practice like? And it was really surprising, and it changed, my initial opinion about what our core message should be. Because when I talked to this agent, he said, you know, before I met you guys, I, I I was working in the dark ages. I was, life insurance it would take me weeks to design a case because you can't access this whole marketplace of solutions all at once. You've got to kind of research these solutions bit by bit, and you have a pretty limited, set of solutions that you can choose from. But you get used to it, and you just don't know that it's painful. And I was really surprised to hear him say that. He's like, "Yeah, you don't know how painful it is until you see something like what Optifino's doing." And he said, but here's the funny thing: when the Optifino platform was being demoed for him, he had this kind of this existential crisis for a moment. He was like, "Oh my gosh, this is going to replace me." And then he listened to more of the story that we were telling about the platform, and he thought, oh, what parts of my practice will this replace? Which is
Right.
a more nuanced kind of thought. And then he very quickly reached the conclusion, oh my gosh, how can this make me better? This is going to make me better. And that's what we're trying to say about Optifino, is that, we're not here to replace the humans. We're here to make them bionic, right? And so I think that's the interesting thing about working on your messaging and really actually talking to your users, because they're going to surprise you. You build a thing, you build a hammer to hammer a nail in a wall, and you ask a user to use it, and you might find that they're actually using it to pull the nail out of the wall, and you hadn't really planned for that, or maybe you didn't think that was the real use case, or they're using it to tenderize a steak or something. you know you've got to see how they use your stuff to understand how to market it, because you might not see that this person has an idea about how the thing that you created solves the problem for them a little differently than you saw it, maybe.
Do you show Optifino to anybody and they say, "Ooh, I'm gonna get to go on vacation"? That's how I feel about AI.
Not
Like
yet.
like, for
Not
someone
yet,
who
but
doesn't get to
yeah.
go on vacation very often, I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, I'm gonna have a minute to myself." Not like, "Hey, this is gonna replace me," or, "Oh, shit." I'm like, "Tina, we're gonna be able to take a day off."
Right, right, right. That was my
Seriously.
first thought, actually, but it's been interesting because I think what we're seeing is that the users that we've talked to are more about, like, how can it make space for more business?
Yeah,
Like,
that too.
like
That
if you're
too, I
not
get it.
taking, if you're not taking 2 or 3 weeks to design a case, how much more business can you take on? And as this particular user who I interviewed, as he mentioned, he's like, there's no ceiling here, because I can become so much more efficient in my practice. It's amazing.
Yes, 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 that too. More business and
Yes.
vacation. Okay, so for everybody that is just tuned in, I am here with Mark Forman, and what we are not doing today is we are not forgetting that the audience needs to be at the center of everything we do. We need to remind ourselves every now and then to stop in our tracks and go back and have conversations with the people that we are trying to solve problems for. And like Ainsley told us, and like Penny told us, be in love with the problem. And in this case, be in love with their problem, because it's only going to make you better. And you will get to tap into some amazing marketingness that maybe your firm might not otherwise have. Got it, Mark? Is
Absolutely.
it right?
You summed
Nailed.
it up perfectly. That's perfect.
Perfect.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, I loved having you today. This was so much fun. I feel like we could talk for so much longer.
I know.
I told Mark, I'm like, let's try to do 35 minutes. We're in 44 minutes, but we could probably talk for 3 more hours. This is the best we could do, people. So thanks for listening. Thanks for sticking with us, Mark. Thanks so much for your time. I love talking to you.
Same here.
And
Thank you, Kelly. It's always a pleasure.
I'll see you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to be notified when new episodes become available. And please consider giving us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. This podcast is sponsored by Intentionally, a financial services growth engine design consultancy and agency. If you want to learn more, please email me at kelly@growintentionally.com. Thank you again for listening, and check back to hear what we're not doing next.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Kelly Waltrich. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.